Okay, this is a reaction video. This is from Girl Gone London. And as you can tell, I'm not in my normal place. I'm also on the road. I'm in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania right now. I'm once more on my travels, but nonetheless, let's see. Americans don't get British humor. Here's why. Well, I think I get British humor quite a bit. I enjoy um, a lot of Monty Python and Blackadder and Chef and other things. But like I said, let's find out. Okay, Americans don't get British.
Americans feel they can relax and laugh at something when it's not too mean or too dark. Brits
Well, again, she's basically generalizing. Now, again, Americans we are a huge country. Okay, a huge country, a much bigger country than England. To simply say Americans don't, or are specifically set one, it's just not correct. Okay, uh, I don't know why she just says that Americans, but maybe most Americans. I don't get that.
don't feel like they can relax and laugh at something unless they're assured it's not too positive. Why did the American version of the British show The Office have to stop following the British format after the very first episode?
Well, here's the thing about the Office. Okay, I didn't like the American version at all. I didn't really watch it. The British version was much funnier. And whenever somebody came in when I was working at Best Buy and I was selling DVDs, they asked for The Office. I say, which one, the funnier one or the unfunny one? And the funnier one was obviously the British version, and the unfunny one was the American version because the British version was much funnier than the American version.
And why do so many Americans not understand Blackadder? Why does this article from 1999 ask fellow Brits the following question? Why don't we love Seinfeld? Seinfeld was a top-rated show in America, it reads. It's fine.
It was a hysterical. Seinfeld was absolutely hysterical. I love Seinfeld.
Final episode attracted American TV's highest ever audience.
That's not true. Okay, Seinfeld is the fourth most watched finale, but it didn't attract the most audience in the America. It did at the time, but the season finale of MASH, um, Cheers, and I believe The Fugitive. I think it's number four, not number one, but nevertheless.
Yet, its audience in Britain has been in the range of the more austere art shows. If you guessed that the answer to all of these why questions was humor, then I'm not that impressed because it was in the title of the video. Aside from the general communication differences, humor is one of those areas where the UK and the USA are about as different as you could be. And the ways in which we express humor and the things we find funny are the topics of today's video. Now, this isn't to say that no British person has ever enjoyed an American comedy. Friends, after all, is one of the top rated American shows here in the UK. And it's not to say that no Americans have ever enjoyed a British comedy. Monty Python, for example, is known by a lot of Americans.
Monty Python's The Life of Brian is it's still the funniest movie, one of the funniest movies I've ever seen. I don't know if it's the funniest movie, maybe it is the funniest. I think Blazing Saddles is also funny too.
But if we zoom out and generalize, as we often do on this channel, the differences become obvious. One of the most popular ways in day-to-day life that Brits will show affection and make jokes is doing something called taking the mick. There are few.
Now, I've never understood what taking the mick means, okay? I guess hopefully she's going to explain it to me, but I've heard taking the piss, taking the mick, but I don't understand what taking the mick means.
Few different meanings to this phrase, but the more positive one that we're going with today is the idea that someone is making fun of you from a place of humor and because they actually like you. Used in this context, it's not like bullying or making fun of someone that you don't like. Instead, it's joking around with a friend, making jokes at their expense, but in a jesting way. Culturally, this does not translate in the US. Now, after more than 10 years here, my humor is...
Well, I'm not so sure about that, but yeah, again, I only know that she's lived in Florida or that she's lived in the southeastern part of the United States. Things are much differently in the Midwest, in the Northeast, in the Northwest. We are a big country. To simply say that Americans don't understand or don't get that or don't, she's talking from a very limited scope of people.
is different, and my personal brand of humor has always been a bit sarcastic, so I have adapted to and understand and use this type of humor myself.
And again, there's a lot of people who in America who are not that dissimilar from her, and they're from all walks of life.
But if you just roll up into some random town in North Carolina and try doing this to someone, you are going to get some strange looks or possibly shot, depending on the town
Again, I'm not so sure about that.
you walk into. This is also a part of what's known as banter. By definition, banter is the playful and friendly exchanging of teasing remarks. It's good-natured. Americans don't really banter, not like Brits do.
Maybe not like Brits do, but we do banter. Okay, we look. If taking the mick means what she means, I take the mick out of a lot of people. Okay, I don't use that term, but I take the mick out of a lot of people.
Banter is typically quick, and it's all about social bonding. In the US, you would typically say compliments to generate goodwill. In the UK, you use jest to do the same thing. It is an adjustment when you first move here to understand that everyone doesn't actually hate you, and they're only willing to banter with you or to take the mick when they like you or trust you. If they didn't, they'd just ignore you. Because they're not actually making fun of you to destroy your feelings, but to show you.
Okay, I guess maybe taking the mick is something you do after you meet somebody, after you talk to somebody and get to know them, then you start taking the mick out of them. But maybe in Britain, you guys do it much earlier than here in the United States. Maybe you guys, you know, take the mick out of them when you first meet them. We don't do that. We basically get to say, "Hi, how you doing? Nice to meet you," and then we start taking the mick after a couple of meetings. Again, I'm not so sure she, I'll concede that she knows what she's talking about, even though I'm not so sure she does. I mean, taking the mick, just joking around, bantering with people. That's something I've done quite early in relationships with a lot of different people.
That they accept you and have positive feelings towards you, which is, of course, far too vulnerable a thing in the UK to say out loud. I kid, but only slightly. The next difference on my list is that British humor is just overall darker than American humor.
That I agree with, but it's still good. It's still funny.
Which brings us to the show The Office. Now, Ricky Gervais, who is a British icon and you'll find in the British version of The Office, had an interesting insight into the differences between the British and American version of the show.
The British one was much funnier than the American version. I love the British version. I hated the American version. The American version was just not funny.
He says, "We had to make Michael Scott a slightly nicer guy with a rosier outlook to life. He could still be childish and insecure and even a bore, but he couldn't be too mean. The irony is, of course, that I think David Brent's dark dissension and eventual redemption made him all the more compelling. But I think that's a lot more palatable in Britain for the reasons already stated. Brits almost expect doom and gloom, so to start off that way but then have a happy ending is an unexpected joy. Network America has to give people a reason to like you, not just a reason to watch you. In Britain, we stop watching things like Big Brother when the villain is evicted. We don't want to watch a bunch of idiots having a good time. We want them to be as miserable as us. America rewards upfront, on-your-sleeve niceness. A perceived wicked streak is somewhat frowned upon."
Well, again, I'm not so sure that's correct, but I believe that's what the network executives think. Okay, the network executives in the United States basically determine what you watch and what a show is going to be like. Doesn't determine what Americans generally like. They just basically say this is what we want, and then you're going to watch it and you're going to like it. That's why a lot of shows, again, a lot of people are streaming things and watching things. It's just hard to get hundreds of thousands of people to watch a specific show because not everybody has the same taste. That's what they're finding out. That's why streaming is better, because you get to choose what you watch.
Now, I included the whole quote here because he is so spot on for how I perceive American versus British comedy and why I personally didn't like the British version of The Office when I first watched it. That doom and gloom kind of comedy that he talks about doesn't sell as well in the US.
Yeah, and again, it's basically what the network executives want, and that determines because the network executives determined it. That's what Americans want, and showed it Maybe we would like it. Who knows? But I loved the British version of The Office much better than the American version.
You can actually see this in all types of television.
In fact, I think my favorite British show of all time is Coupling. That was absolutely a riot. That went on far too short, and I loved every minute of that show, Coupling.
Including the differences between UK and USA soap operas, but that's for another video. British humor is slightly dark. Just the other day, I made a video while I was ill, and I showed my inspirational blanket with an inspirational quote on it about going after your dreams. One of the comments made a funny but astute observation, saying something along the lines of, the British version of that blanket says, "Don't worry, it all ends soon." Dark humor is much more appreciated in the UK than in the USA, and their comedies show this. Another example would be Fleabag, a UK show that relies on some pretty dark humor. Compare this to American shows like Friends, there's nothing dark about it. It's practically uplifting, and even when things are going wrong, there's that rosy outlook to life that Ricky Gervais is talking about. And Americans like and react to this type of comedy. Americans feel they can relax and laugh at something when it's not too mean or too dark. Brits don't feel like they can relax and laugh at something.
Not necessarily, but there are dark comedies in the United States that are pretty good. That get After Hours was a movie by Martin Scorsese back in the mid '80s, which was a pretty dark comedy about a guy who goes out in the middle of the night and basically has all different things happen to you. Everything bad happens. Everything that you could think that would be bad that would happen to you happens to him. And it was actually pretty good. Good movie.
Unless they're assured it's not too positive. And this is why the US version of The Office had to adapt and create its own twist on the show after the first episode. The British version just wouldn't land for an American audience. Another big difference in humor across the pond is what we find funny. British humor often involves cringy or awkward moments as the star of the show. Someone who was watching The In-Betweeners posted on Reddit saying, "How do you Brits watch cringe comedy? I was watching The In-Betweeners and every episode made me want to shrivel up into a ball and die. Is this just normal for you?"
That was kind of like Coupling too. Coupling was kind of cringy too, but it's funny. I mean, you know, you also have to live with this factor, or realize the fact that what you're happening, these are performers, these are actors performing in a show. They aren't actually, this isn't actually happening in real life. And if it was happening in real life, it would be a little bit, but yeah, it's kind of funny watching a person squirm.
The commenters responded that yes, this is part of it. It's art imitating life. It's funny to see awkward moments happen to someone else, and misfortune can be funny. American comedy, on the other hand, is typically about escapism. The situations that happens to characters usually ends up being more over the top rather than the cringy, true to life situations in